morning. I'm joining you soon after 7, I think it is. It's a good early start for me. And so I had the intention of adding another daisy on here, so I've moved that one from down there to up here in the still life setup. You can see it shining out at you there. And I'll take a photograph of it at this from this viewpoint in case you want to work from the same reference photo as the setup that I've got. But really, I just wanted to kind of, like, I didn't feel very happy with my video yesterday because I was struggling to paint that daisy in that position. I wasn't sure if it worked. And rather than having gone back and looked at it again now, rather than change the whole thing and rub that out, I thought, no, I'll continue with the daisy theme because I quite liked having that second little one there. And I think in between, if there was another one, the only question there is that this one will look so small in relation to the other because the other daisy's much bigger in real life, but it might look a bit odd in the setup that it's 2 different sizes. But I'm going to take that risk. So I'll start with, I think I'll start by putting in the centre of the daisy. So I'm going to make a colour to work for the centre, and I think actually starting with burnt sienna. I'll bring you a bit closer. Yeah, so I'm going to start with burnt sienna, which looks, which is that one there, for the centre of the daisy, and I'll put some cadmium yellow in with it, a bit more cadmium yellow, and I'll just plant that on there, I think, and see how that feels. I think maybe it's more cadmium, and I'm not even sure about the burnt sienna, but I feel like it's got more than just the cadmium yellow in there. I mean, there's almost a kind of a greenish hint as well. I may as well put out some green too because I'll be using it later anyway. But I could mix a little bit of green maybe in with that. Oh gosh, okay. I really have to clean out the covers of my acrylic tubes. Okay, so that's, what is it? Sap green, is it? Yeah. So I've added a bit of sap green into the mix there, so I'm looking at the centre of the flower as I'm trying to make it, as I'm trying to make the colour of it. And this now looks like a good colour on my piece of, on my palette at least. It might not read as being bright enough here, but it's a start. So let's see. I think it sits about here, the centre. Yeah, I'm happy enough with that colour for now, because it's in shadow. I don't want it to overtake the brightness of the petals. And I'm laying it down as thickly as I can, so I kind of lifted up a ridge of it on the brush, and then turning the brush, holding the brush almost parallel really with the paper, and laying it on that way. I'm just going to put that brush into the palette, into the water now, and pick up another one because I want to do the petals next, and I don't want the petals to be changed by the yellow colour I've just used for the centre. I'm half closing my eyes and just judging the size and shape of the position of the yellow. It wants to sit above the edge of the jug there. Yeah, so maybe it needs to come across a tiny bit more. Just put out some more of the cadmium yellow. Yeah, it's quite a workout trying to get this paint out. A workout for my mental state as well as my physical state, because I get so irritated trying to get this stuff out. It would be worth a half an hour sorting out the covers, and then I could just leave them turned upside down like that. Anyway, you don't have to hear all of that now. Okay, so I'm going to go back and do the centre colour again. So the burnt sienna mixed with the cadmium yellow. burnt sienna, cadmium yellow, and there was a sap green I put in with it, wasn't it? So that's the green and yellow, a bit more yellow, a bit more sap green. And I'm looking over at the colour of the centre of the yellow again. I'm happy enough with that colour now. And then scooping up quite a lot of it on the brush. I hope you can see the actual colour. I don't know if you can with the backlight. And then I'm going to lay down. See, it wants to be further across there. And it reads almost as a square, the centre of the daisy there. Okay, so that's that. And now I'm going to see about making a colour to represent the petals that are not getting so much light. And they're not completely in the light. And again, I'm using the burnt sienna mixed with, this time, a touch of Payne's Grey and a bit of the, what's this called? Wedgwood. But really ultramarine blue with white is what it is, you know. But anyway, so I'm making a kind of a greyish colour to represent the petals that are turned away from the light over here. So there's a couple of them. And that looks quite dark. I put a little bit of white into it so that it's not quite as dark as that. But it's close enough to what I want really. Let's see, this might be too light now. So I'm locating those petals according to the centre of the flower. I'm happy enough with that shade. It's on the blue side of grey, which suits me well enough. At least for these two that are turned in that direction, to me have a kind of a bluish grey hint. Might not be the same for all of the shadowy petals, but I think it'll work for this side too. So it's a bit dark where it needs to be darker now. When I have closed my eyes, it seems like that part is a little bit darker, so I'm just going to put some Payne's Grey into the mix and some brown to deepen the tone, but to dull it down a little bit too and stop it being so blue, because the Payne's Grey has a bluish hint to it. So, gosh, that's quite dark now, isn't it? I'll carry it on anyway and see how I go. So this is the petal that's extending down towards the lip of the jug, and then there's one over here. The ones that I'm painting in now are the bits that I see to be the darkest parts, I suppose, of the white petals. And it'll soon be time for me to indicate the lightest parts, and that'll help to make a lot more sense of what I'm looking at. But until I'm ready to do those, I want to just make sure that I've captured all of the mid-tone ones, so that I'm finding the pathway for myself through this flower and not just going straight for the punch of the white. So, yeah, so there's another turn down here. I mean, I can always lighten up these colours, but it's difficult, I think, after putting on the light to darken. Okay. I'll maybe bring it closer to you just to see what I've done, because I'm not sure if it may be very evident from where you were standing. So I've indicated the position of the darks, the greys coming out from the centre. Just finding where I see the mid-tone and the darkest part of the whites, and that's the colour I've chosen to use for them. If you look at the other daisy, you'll see that there's some parts that are really quite dark in that too, but it's more of a brighter petaled one. Anyway, let's see what happens next. So I'll go to just getting some white off the palette here, and as I look again at the daisy, I mean, I'm using the brush that I used for the shadows in that, so it's still got a hint of grey about it, and that kind of suits me, because I know that it's not completely white that I'm working with here. And I also felt that there was a hint of cadmium yellow maybe in the white too. And I'm putting some cadmium red in there as well, because it's, to me, in places got a kind of a, maybe a yellowy, creamy kind of white to it. So I'm going to ease myself into the brightest white by still working with something that's slightly off-white. And again, picking enough up on one side that I can turn it and lay it quite flat and thick. So, yeah, I think this petal here, well, maybe this one here. I don't know if I've gone too creamy. I think I have actually gone a bit too creamy with it. So I'm going to put in some of that Wedgwood, or if you don't have the Wedgwood, a touch of ultramarine blue and more white into it will give you another a sharper white, you know. So I'm going to continue. I think there was that slightly creamier one there, but then the rest of it feels to me to have that more of a bluish grey again. And here there's it's significantly lighter than the petals beside it, but it's still not white, you know. I'm just going to let you come right in close now, so that you can see the marks I'm making. And I know you can no longer see the flower that I'm working from, but just let me know if you want me to send you a photograph of that. Sorry, I'm just trying to work out the best position for me to still be able to see, and for you to be able to focus in on the particular painting that's happening in this flower here. So it's this one I'm painting. I guess it's kind of the lighting from the window is disturbing you maybe. Okay, hopefully that's a bit better. Alright, so I'm still working with the blue, the kind of blue-grey. That was a kind of creamy grey, and I put some more Wedgwood blue into it to make that colour. And I see that that seems to me too to be the colour of this petal coming down here. It's one of the most significant ones. I didn't want this to be fully white yet, because to me the right hand side of it has got the really bright white streak, the right edge of that petal. Now I want to leave the brightest white to describe that. And then there's this one that's a little petal overlapping that longer one, and then there's one going in this direction again that's kind of being overlapped by that little one. And it's a bit darker. The blue is a little bit darker there. I mean the blue-grey colour. So that this one reads as being darker underneath that brighter one there. It's helpful to notice which edge contains the darker colour when you're meeting edges. Is the overlapping one darker, or is the one underneath darker? Because if you get that relationship, you get more of a true sense of form then. And then there's this really light petal again that's extending out from behind a bigger one, and the bigger one is coming towards us, so it's kind of foreshortened the bottom edge. The end of it to me looks as though it's a little bit bluer than this petal below it. Too much paint on the brush to get clarity there, so I've wiped away some, and also this, I think, a bit of collage underneath here, or something lumpy anyway, that I'm having to work to cover. So I used thicker paint to cover that with it, in order to still keep the clean edge that I want. Okay, I'm going to go back now and get some more of the lighter colour, because as I go into the centre, this one does get lighter. And then there's a petal that overlaps the centre a little bit. you can forget that they're petals that you're doing and really just see shapes of colour and tone. And that's what I'm doing here, is I'm just looking at the size and the shape of each dark and light area. I just stood back there because, you know, it's always a good idea to stand back, to take the heat off what you're doing and maybe focus on something that's different from what you were focusing on. When you stand back, you see other things that could be addressed kind of more urgently than the part you might have been working on. Stand back again. It's okay, yeah, so we're getting there with it. I'm going to make this longer, thinner petal here. So there's some that are kind of crinkling over the centre, but I'm okay with that. You may think, like there, yesterday I chose not to do the ones that were covering the centre, but that was already struggling to breathe a bit, whereas this one is a bit more present. It's all there, like there's more substance in it already, so I think it can cope with the flurry of petals that are nondescript almost around the centre of it, because it's got these ones that are branching out as well. And there's one that branches out here that's got a very bright tip on it, as does this one here that's been overlapped. The tip of this one is also very bright, brighter than the overlapping petal. And again, I need more paint because there's a piece of collage stuck on there alright, and it's got a ridge that I need to work over with the white paint, so I'm just making it thicker to cover the ridge, because I want it to be a clean edge. The edge of the daisy isn't a feathered edge, it's a clean, crisp shape, and it's what I love about the daisies in a painting, is that they provide a kind of a sense of clarity and structure, and them being white as well means that they're kind of punchy stepping stones to have through your painting. And then there's the little touch of light below on that one, and this one could have a bit more brightness on the right hand side, and I think it was going to brighten up the right hand side of this too, wasn't I? I'll just stand back again now. I mean, the paint is really quite thick in the bright areas, you can see that, I think. And then it's a bit bottom heavy with all the light going on down there, so I'm just going to give some attention now to the ones that are above here. There's a folded back one. It's kind of triangular in shape, but it's got a soft top. And then there's one beside it. Again, I feel like I'm going a bit too bright with these two now, so I'll just darken with a bit of the Wedgwood colour. Make it a bit more bluey. And a touch of burnt sienna. So Wedgwood and the burnt sienna will give me a kind of a greyish blue, I think. That's just going to subdue the tones of these petals that are overlapping the centre ones. It's overlapping the centre and those little small wrinkled ones that are there. And I'm happier for them to be a little bit more muted, these that I'm doing just now. It's okay, thank you. Yeah, and there's this other one that extends out. Again, it's not pure white, only at the tip. Does it read as being pure white, I think. And again, there's that ridge of collage that I'm covering over, so I'm picking up more paint to extend over the collage. Okay, so as I stand back, it seems to me like there's lots of divisions here between the petals that doesn't really happen in reality. They're not quite that dark, the edges where the petals meet one another. So I'm going to soften those edges and let the brighter edges be the linking up thing, rather than the dark divisions. In here the edge isn't quite as thick and dark. And here as well, I can make those come together a little bit more. after all, from a distance, I wanted to read as a daisy. I wanted to read as a singular flower there. And then there's something over here too. There's a brightness on this. I don't know if it's quite that bright now. And I know that it's not quite that bright, so I'm mixing up a colour that I can use to mix in with that. I'm going to leave what I've put down and just put the colour over the top of it to subdue it a little bit. Because it's quite bright, it's just not that bright. And the one that goes this way has a kind of a brightish edge to it too. I'm just painting in colour now where I see it to be. And that one has a really bright little flicker up the way. That I've just put on with a very thick dollop of white. I love the papery quality of these flowers. And I want to make that brighter there again. And here too. Yeah. And then this can also have brightness. Light is coming from this side really, you know. Okay. And just the last little bit there that's reading out being darker than it is now is this bit here, the inside of this petal. So I've made a greyish, creamy greyish colour. It's not the brightest. And to work over that bit there. And I think that maybe there's also something bright underneath here. That little bend seems to be quite bright too. Sometimes you could stop earlier, but I wanted to model this flower in the way that I meant to show you yesterday, the modelling that happened with that one. But it didn't feel so satisfying for me because I suppose it was turned away and also I wasn't convinced of its location. But I feel happier with this one. I feel like it's resolving the issue of these two daisies by having something in between, and I'm not having to work so hard to make it sit there happily somehow. But sometimes you find that after a few moves you've got something that reads as a daisy, and then you don't have to keep going. You can just let it be a few moves, you know. If you want it to look like a daisy and it looks like a daisy, that's enough. But other times you might want to carry on and just enjoy the process of finding the particular turn, the particular size, the particular colour of every part of it. And when it's an enjoyable thing, it's quite a lovely process to let yourself enjoy that, you know. To enjoy that finding. I'm just manipulating the edge of this petal a little bit because I feel like it turns more that way at the end. And what I'll do is put on some dark green to explain the background coming up to it, but before I put on the dark I want to lift off some of the brightness so that the dark isn't having to really struggle to cover the thick white paint. Okay, so I'm going to make a dark green there by mixing Van Dyke Brown with the sap green and the ultramarine blue, and maybe a little more. So the ultramarine blue and Van Dyke Brown are the main two colours here to make that dark green that I'm looking for to describe the edge that's coming up to meet the left side of this petal, and to carve into it a little bit so that it turns it a bit more towards the side. So I kind of like that, and I feel like that's true to what's happening here. There's a different negative space between the two than I originally had, and I wanted to address that. And with half closed eyes I can see that there's other places too that could use some of this dark green. And I'm just going to stand back and be sure that I'm not getting trigger happy here, and just filling in every little bit of dark. I don't want it to stand out so much that we no longer see the foxgloves. But I'm enjoying crispening up the edges and, you know, letting this daisy really be all there and occupy the space. I just use some sap green on its own. In some places it's becoming more green than dark. I think it's no harm, yeah. So what's under here in actual fact is a leaf rather than the lady's mantle. So I'm covering over the brightness of the yellow there. So I think it feels a bit more convincing that that be green than yellow. And there's a little flash of a lighter green underneath that leaf. And a little flash of a lighter green here too. Yeah, I'm going to let the sprinkling of yellow exist elsewhere. And just a couple of more places where I think I can use this green and brown dark mix. For example, here in the triangle between the petals here, and in the, yeah, I think here. And last of all, at the top, I really want it to be significantly dark, and so I'm putting in some Payne's grey into the mix as well, because the brown isn't as dark as I want it to be. Some Van Dyke browns really are really dark, and other ones don't have so much kind of black in them. I find that with watercolour too. So there's just a little shift I want to make here to turn this a little bit more smoothly with the dark colour. And then I put it across to explain the edge coming up to meet this bright petal here. And again, I think I'll subdue that lady's mantle flower a little bit and bring in something to describe the light on the leaf back there. It looks a little more like the colour of a daisy, doesn't it? So I just put some more green into it. Okay, I think I want that same green to, I'm just making up these positions for the green now, so that, because it just feels like it helps to settle the daisy for there to be some of this green colour in the space around it. And even in the stem of the daisy itself, there's a touch of green in there. And the daisy that I did yesterday has a little bit of green on the stem too. I mean, it's actually more evident than I'm showing it to be there. I give it a bit more oomph. The bit where it's really catching the light, the stem in the middle. The middle of this one is kind of catching the light, so I'll take the risk and try it and see if it's okay, or if it's too much. I think it's alright. I think it's helpful to show the stem extending down and into the jug. And then even some of the stems of the lady's mantle will have that same colour, but be very much thinner. Just making some of that lady's mantle greenish yellow again. I need the lemon yellow to do that. Really, I've finished with the daisy. I'm just enjoying myself now. Kind of extending out the way again. Just picked up some lemon yellow there, and I got some on my finger, so I'm going to use it. I feel like the lady's mantle now can extend out the way again. bit more presence now that there's something in the daisy. There's something in that area. It gives me permission, I think, to do something brighter in the yellow of the mantle again. And I'll do that with the stencil. Because again, I don't want to have that much control really over the particular shape of it. But I do want it to have a presence, that yellow, that white yellow. I used to always feel like I wanted to introduce oil paint towards the end of a painting, and I'm feeling that less nowadays, and I wonder whether it's that the acrylic paint has improved and it feels a bit more lush, or if it's I don't know, that I'm using it more thickly or something. I think there's room for all of this thin layering in the early stages, and then it feels exciting to me to let the paint just be laid on almost, you know, just touched on, so that it's really left proud of the surface, almost standing proud of the surface, standing out in relief. And that's the kind of thing that if I had I'd imagine if I made a fluid consistency of that and just sprayed it on, I think I'd do that. Do a spray or a splash. So I'm wetting the yellow and white mix that I used for the lady's mantle flowers, and then I think I'll just do something like flinging it on a bit. Needed to wet it a bit more now. Let's see if it'll work now. Is there something kind of spray-like, isn't there, about those flowers? Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay, I think that's all right. I'm just going to pull you back, because I've still got some of that yellow light colour on the brush, and I think it could be useful to disperse it somewhere else. Just looking for my masking tape. I thought I could use the masking tape to mask off the edge of the background where there's a leaf up here to the right that's got, I think, something of that yellow edge to it. And it also feels like a good place to extend the brightness of the yellow up to here, for the purposes of the composition of my painting. I think it would be helpful to have the same colour in a different light, in a different way. There. I mean, it's very insignificant, really. You know, I don't want it to read as lady's mantle over on this side. I do want there to be something of that colour extending across. It seems like a good idea. And it does read as the colour of the stems for me. Stems of the poppy, and then we've got the final daisy, which really was the one that most excited me. Up here, trumpeting out towards the garden and towards the light, and that might be, I might put that in at some stage as well. You know this colour that's on my brush that I used for the lady's mantle, I think I can also use it here in the pattern on the vase. The pattern on the jug. Just I think it could be a touch darker. It seems important to bring it into these other places. Certainly, I think it reads over here as the stem, or at least it could be useful to have a colour like that over there. Just introducing the daisy. I've got a hankering now to do that daisy, and then I've got a hankering to do some more in the lovely foxgloves, because I feel like now that we've got these daisies up to a different level of completion, that it maybe is calling for more in the foxglove too. It might be just that it's needing an iridescent, fluorescent, neon pink or something. I'll turn off the video, and if I find my pink, and if I do that, then I'll do a little video again. Okay, all the best for your day. Maybe I should bring you close just to see the daisy in the end, kind of blousy, facing down that way, and the spray of the lady's mantle seemed to me to be a useful thing to put in there as a contrast, I suppose, to the chiselling out as well. And there's that offending one that was daisy that was facing down, that I think is given a bit more. It's got more of a permission to be there now that there's these other two softening the blow. But you can see, I think now that maybe the foxgloves needs heightening. So the neon pink is what I'm going to see if I can find, because I think that'll be the colour I'm after. Okay, thanks for your attention. All the best.